on two masks because I have Mr. Lewis's voice in my head, and he could say, be particular. My name is Jamila Thompson, and on behalf of the staff, I would like to thank John Miles and the entire Lewis family for the honor and the privilege of sharing the Congressman and Mrs. Lewis, who was his partner in life and in public service with generations of the staff for the last 33 years in the celebration of his life and his legacy. The Congressman would want me to tell you, as I look at you today in his favorite color, that you look good, you look fresh, you look clean, you look beautiful. Thank you. We are honored to serve you, and we were honored to serve him. We would also like to express our sincere and our great appreciation to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Majority Leader, the Majority Whip, the Clerk of the House of Representatives, the Office of Employee Assistance, the Congressional Black Caucus, and all of your amazing staff for your patience and your guidance during this very difficult time. People always ask us, what was it like to work for Congressman Lewis? What was he like up close? What was he like in real life? And it is too difficult to explain, so our answer was always the same. He's just as you may imagine, but better, and that no day was ever the same. What you know about the Congressman is true. He was a gentleman. He was truly of the people and a peaceful soul. When he came into the office every single day, he would greet every staffer, every fellow, every intern with a good morning, sir, a good morning, ma'am. He would end every request, every successful speech, every successful bill, every hearing, every markup with, thank you, young brother, thank you, sister, thank you, my child, or my dear. As staff, we felt it was our duty to create and maintain a space where the Congressman could be completely and wholly himself. In college, we often say that there's the freshman 15 that you gain a little bit around. Well, in our office, there was the John Lewis 20, because he and Michael would bring in lunch and far, far too often dessert, because some cake or some pie or some brownie would be calling out to them in the grocery store, and they would want everyone to come together and sit down and share a meal. We were a little family, a little enclave. A lot of drama, a lot of fun, and so much love. He broke down those work barriers, and he welcomed our parents, our spouses, our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews, our godchildren, and our friends into the circle, making them fall equally in awe of his greatness. Sometimes the world got a little glimpse of our nest during these impromptu gatherings, and certain videos may go viral. Well, we were like a well-oiled machine when it came to policy and casework. Although we were like that in public, he enjoyed stirring things up in the office. You might call him a little bit of an instigator. He would get us in trouble with Michael, try and corner us with questions, and stir things up. And with time, you knew not to take the bait. And you would learn to say, oh no, Congressman, you're not gonna get me today. And he would laugh. I think that that's what I'm gonna miss the most. I'm gonna miss his laugh. And not the one that you see on television, but the one where he would be sitting back and shooting the wind, and he would throw back his head, and he would just laugh from his heart, from his belly, from his soul. So many workers are often taught to be invisible, but with Mr. Lewis, he always saw you and made you feel special and worthy. Dr. King and Rosa Parks spent time with him as a teenager, and it changed the course of his life. So I believe that he spent every waking moment paying it forward. He could be absolutely exhausted, but still take one more picture, spend one more moment, especially with young people. This meant that we were always, always, always behind schedule. So the very first lesson in staffing the congressman was to learn to operate on John Lewis time, which translates into late, but trusting that it would always work out. As he told everyone, he could outwalk the entire staff. And so our duty was to keep up. When it was time to move, we did. But when it was time to be present, and the congressman needed a little bit of quiet, we would try to create that space. He would slow down to appreciate and absorb the majesty of the moment for his own mental archives. Just as we tried to preserve the sanctity of his space, he allowed us to be our true and authentic selves, just the very best version. He found staff who were unique, and I think represented either a little bit of his personality or what he needed to complement it. We made our ways to Mr. Lewis through very random paths, coincidences, some strategies or others, and for believers, through divine intervention. He didn't hire based on a resume, but your energy, your being, your essence, your passion, and your potential. We were a medley group of musicians, air traffic controllers, photographers, dancers, social workers, entertainers, artists, historians, and every once in a while an actual lawyer or a political scientist. He got all into our business. And was there in spirit or in person for the big moments. In the same way that he always took a call from Mrs. Lewis or John Miles, he let us drop everything in a family emergency. And generations of children have fond memories of hanging out in his office as their parents worked nearby. He let us be ourselves, especially when it came to civic participation. He let us organize, protest, testify, and always, always, always vote. We tried to absorb his energy and his lessons. To my knowledge, 3 staff served him for over 20 years. Ruth Berg, Tueri Butler, and first cousin, Michael Collins. May you please stand. And there's a whole generation of staff who are right behind them at 19, at 15, at 17, at 12, at 10 years, at 14 years. Ruth Riley, Brenda Jones, Jared McKinley, Rochelle O'Neill. And then there are the staffers who could never really leave, like Linda Chastain and Jacob Gillison, whom he kept pulling back in as friends and confidants. Although some of you and some people moved on, you couldn't really, because his spirit was in you forever. His voice is always in our head. Be kind, be mindful, be particular. Make it plain, make it simple, make it sing. Working for him was a little bit of a nightmare sometimes. Because as no matter how hard we worked, he always worked harder. Every single day he woke up at the crack of dawn, watched the news, and read the newspapers. His memory was like a living encyclopedia, which means he forgot nothing and could pull something back from 10 years ago because he knew it was the same staff and we were still there. He expected us to be informed with facts from primary sources, not hearsay. And when he walked into the office, he would ask what constituents were calling and writing about and add that information to his endless archives. You learned the hard way, or the subtle way, because he was not direct, that when he asked you a question, he usually knew the answer, but wanted to see whether or not you could represent him and his constituents. When preparing for a big vote or a big speech, he would drop a subtle hint. Have you read this poem, this speech, a book, some scripture? Do you remember this painting? And then he would say, let's come back and talk about it later on. This little hint would prepare you for the aftermath of those executive sessions that he had with himself. And after those sessions, we would learn how and in which direction the Spirit moved him. And then we would have our marching orders. He would take the essence of a complicated policy and make it accessible and real to the people. The congressman loved serving on the Ways and Means Committee. He always showed up, and he hated to miss votes on the floor. Let me say that again. He could not stand to miss votes. The voice messages I have from him about the votes that he was about to miss are still on my phone to this day. This is the reason why we are so thankful that Congressman Kildee and his staff were willing to serve and to help us cast his ballots during this pandemic and to serve as his proxy. The congressman would walk the halls or sit in committee or sit in the office, and he loved the beauty of the House of Representatives. He loved its closeness to the people and the complicated reflection of the status of our nation. Every visitor to our office received a full dose of Southern hospitality, the offer of a Georgia Coke, some peanuts, a brief tour of his office, and some time on our beloved balcony with its stunning view of the US Capitol. While he loved this country and all its people, the record should be clear on his immense pride in representing Georgia's 5th Congressional District. He was so proud to represent Metro Atlanta and all of its cities, all of its counties, and all of its people. He was on a mission to serve, to make them feel heard, respected, and represented, regardless of where they fell on the political spectrum. The constituents were our compass, and Congressman Lewis worked around the clock to find solutions to their challenges. When it came to public service and public policy, his name did not need to be on the headlines or on the front lines. It was the action and the results that mattered. Not every problem needs a bill. And he could always find compromise without compromising his values or his principles when the challenge presented itself. He played the long game, and he knew every trick in the book, and he expected the staff to fight in a nonviolent manner for the people. When constituents were concerned about the rights of Soviet Jewry, he took action. When faced with inequality in health services, he advanced technical changes to reduce the cost and increase services to life-saving care, especially for the issues that affected communities of color, like kidney disease and COPD. When workers faced pensions issues, he found ways to give them security. When families were separated by immigration policies, he worked around the clock to reunite them. When people couldn't get their Social Security checks, he fought, and sometimes for years, to make that happen. When taxpayers and workers struggled with an outdated bureaucracy of the IRS, he worked to modernize the entire agency. When he heard from frustrated veterans, he fought for their respect, their earned benefits, and their care. When he saw an alarming increase in abusive relationships, he developed strategies to stop the cycle before it began. When some tried to eliminate the U.S. Institute of Peace, he found a way and built a coalition to keep that building and the prospect and the hope of peace still alive. When he was worried about the state of our globe for generations yet unborn, he introduced the Environmental Justice Act. When looking at the rights of marginalized communities around the world, he worked to diversify the face of our diplomacy and insert empathy and standards to our global policies. And when people complained about immovable lines to vote, he co-wrote the Voter Empowerment Act. The list is too long to recognize his legislative and policy successes and the impact that he has on people across the nation and around the world. So I ask you, as we sit in this historic space, and as you drive through Metro Atlanta and you feel and you see the greatness of his legacy, historic preservation and civic education, I ask that you hold that in your heart and your soul and your spirit. He felt that we needed to know and study our history to make sure that we never repeated it. He was both human and divine. It is so difficult to explain the magnitude, the genius, the gentle grace of this man. I would ask at this moment for the staff to take a stand, please, so that you can see and know just a sample of who we are. Former staff. Thank you. A few years ago, we had a reunion, and we realized that there aren't that many staff. We have a lot of interns and a lot of fellows, but the congressman held us close. I don't think that there are many offices where you have the opportunity to hold your boss's hand and to adjust his tie and to tell every person that you love them. He created this space. He created this family. As a staff, we are heartbroken. We are lost. But we know that the work continues. The fight remains. And we must not get lost in the sea of despair. So if asked how you may honor the congressman, I will echo the words of the greats who stood here before. You can make sure that his work, his sacrifice, his message lives on, and that there are actions that every person can do regardless of their age or their station in life. Be kind, be mindful, recognize the dignity and the worth of every human being. Be the best version of yourself. Be informed, stay engaged, even though the work is hard. And if you are of age and eligible, for the love of God, please vote. Thank you.